Hello, everybody. My name is Volker Boege. I'm a senior research fellow with the Toda Peace Institute, and I'm in charge of the Institute's work stream on climate change, conflict, and peace in the Pacific. And with me here today is Reverend James Bhagwan. James is the General Secretary of the Pacific Conference of Churches. The Pacific Conference of Churches is the ecumenical alliance for the Pacific region. It has a membership of 33 churches and 10 national councils. And over the last years, it has been very proactive in dealing with the challenges of the climate emergency for the Pacific peoples. So thank you, James, for taking your time today and be with us here for this short interview. James, as I understand it, you've been to several COPs, and now we have this COP28 later this year, and it's taking place in the United Arab Emirates, one of the world's biggest oil producers, under the presidency of the CEO of its national oil company. So what do you expect from this COP, and what do you think, or why do you think it's important that PCC is present at that COP?
Thank you, Volker, firstly for the opportunity to join you and have this discussion, but also for this question. Actually, attending COP28 was a very difficult decision personally, from someone who has been involved or been concerned about the issue of climate justice since before coming into PCC, and also for the organization itself. Our focus has always been on the aspect of climate justice, and our colleagues in different collaboration spaces for climate justice spent a lot of time reflecting, I think this year, on whether they will attend COP28. One of our partners has decided to boycott, and that got us into a very important discussion, particularly because, as you mentioned, we are holding this, or this year's meeting is not only in Dubai, it's chaired by a significant figure in the fossil fuel industry. Also the concern around limited spaces for civil society engagement and activism outside of the COP space. We did not attend COP27. We made a deliberate decision not to do that, and I'll perhaps reflect on that more when we talk about loss and damage. But it's really reflecting on what is our why, what is our purpose for engaging in the climate change negotiations. PCC has been involved in climate change issues since 2004, the Otin Taai Declaration, which marked this work for the churches in the Pacific, and also, the mandate moving forward. And have participated as an organization in a number of COPs, from Copenhagen up until the COP26 in Glasgow, which was my last COP to attend. And so our recognition of and reflection on the work that we need to do was also underpinned by my attendance this year at the what we call the intersessional meeting, the SB 58, the negotiations that take place in Bonn in June every year, which is really where a lot of the work and the negotiations get done, without the leaders, without the circus, as I like to call it, and the role there in engaging with negotiators. The work with our other partners outside of the Pacific was significant enough for us to say, yes, I think we need to be there. We have a role to play. We have, from our methodology of PCC of being prophetic, pastoral, and practical, we We know that there's advocacy work that needs to be done. And this year, for the first time, there's going to be a faith pavilion within the zone where states and parties will be gathering. And so that gives us an opportunity to strengthen our collaboration with other faith communities that are working in this space, other faith-based organizations, and really support pastorally the work of states, negotiators, but also activists and others who have a very, very important role in this place. And one of the significant things for us is that we have decided that we would, as the Pacific Conference of Churches, and in recognition of the role of churches in the Pacific, request the governments of the countries from which we come to badge us, to accredit us to the COP, the UNFCCC. And so I've been badged by Fiji, and my colleague, Betty Radule, who is our climate justice enabler at PCC and from the Marshall Islands, is badged by the Republic of Marshall Islands. And so we offer both, in that sense, a holistic approach from the region, from the North Pacific, from Coral Island atolls, and from the South Pacific in that regard. And that gives us, I guess, more work in terms of access of how we can roll out our prophetic, pastoral, and practical approach.
Thank you, James. That's very convincing. You mentioned the problem of fossil fuels. And so you are a Pacific champion of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, FFNPT. So what is this treaty about, or the idea of this treaty, and how do you intend to induce it into the COP discussions?
Thank you. The idea, of course, or the call for a rapid phase out of fossil fuels is not a new thing, particularly not for our Pacific churches. In the Otin Taai Declaration, which turns 20 next year, there was a call by Pacific churches for the rapid phase out of fossil fuel industry and the need for rapid reduction of carbon emissions. So this is not a new journey for PCC, in particular in partnership with Green Faith, a coalition of faith-based organizations and churches. We had been advocating for a rapid phase out of fossil fuels. This is part of the mitigation of climate change that many of us know. That has led us to engage more deeply in this issue because we often see that this is being sidelined with focus on adaptation, with focus on loss and damage, that mitigation still needs to be an area that we address. That unless we reduce carbon emissions through this huge fossil fuel industry, things will never change. And all we're doing is basically responding to the impacts of climate change rather than addressing climate change itself or what contributes to it. The number of new fossil fuel projects that are ready to go, is huge and unconscionable in the context of climate change. The Living Planet document or statement that was put out by the World Council of Churches referred to these new projects as carbon bombs or fossil fuel bombs, because we're at a breaking point already in terms of current emissions and current fossil fuel plants. And yet countries, while making certain commitments and attending these meetings, continue to initiate new expansion into the fossil fuel industry. And so the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty is a natural step to address this, looking at it, almost from the perspective of how we approach the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons or the Test Ban Treaty, to look at it from that perspective. And in working with the steering committee, the Global Steering Committee for the Fossil Fuel Treaty campaign, we've been able to sort of look at, what what this means in terms of a just transition. So this is not just a call for rapid emissions. This is trying to unpack for each region, for countries, what a just transition would look like. Noting that it's not only about economies, it's not only about employment and jobs in the fossil fuel industry, that even we as affected countries in an affected region still at the moment rely on fossil fuel. Particularly for the Pacific, we're a maritime nation. What does a just transition from fossil fuel mean for us? Many of us have been advocating for a long time now on decarbonizing the marine or sea transport industry. And how would we as communities that rely so much on fossil fuel to transport us from the islands, how does that affect us as well? So this was really a first step in that process for PCC to engage in. We sought a consensus from the Pacific churches through our Pacific Church Leaders meeting, which endorsed the campaign and endorsed the call for a non-proliferation treaty on fossil fuels. And also in their statement, they said that to focus only on adaptation funding and loss and damage funding without addressing the mitigation, without reducing fossil fuels, is akin to receiving 30 pieces of silver. That very biblical kind of understanding. It's a betrayal of those affected by climate change. So this treaty takes it outside the UNFCCC space. We have seen the response already by countries like Vanuatu, Tuvalu, Fiji, etc., coming on board. The number of academic, civil society, and faith organizations and churches and other religious groups that have come on board to support this treaty is very encouraging. We have states and cities in developed countries that are coming on board. And so we look forward to seeing how we can advance this treaty campaign further at COP28.
Thank you. That's indeed very encouraging. Thanks, James, for this interview.